It's me again. I admit I have revised my most recent Thursday thoughts verbal flow probably 6 or 7 times. Last night I had it on a loop. This is part of my process. It's been super instrumental actually in allowing for accelerated recognition of blind spots in moment to moment thinking and demystifying patterns within myself. It is Saturday, so I'm wearing purple. But I got this at a thrift store / antique store last weekend. It is an extra large, and the print is very shiny, but it's 100% cotton and it's gem purple. And I like to honor Saturn by wearing purple on Saturdays. I don't know. But there are a few things that I want to open up a little more from the last discussion, because part of how these things happen is I jump from node to node to node on the web of interconnected concepts when it comes to this relational thing. And sometimes I'm very rooted in my experience and sort of brush past parts of the dynamic that I actually do understand. And I let the bitterness in my nature overcome the fact that I actually have fairly deep understanding of these things and a lot of grace and forgiveness for them. My given name can be translated to bitter breath of life. And so that theme of bitterness, I'm also a human design projector, and the not self, the shadow side of the projector is a sense of bitterness. And that comes usually from overextension. That usually comes from just doing too much and burning out and then feeling resentful, right? So that's a common pattern in yesteryears that I do a lot of stillness work to prevent from occurring in me again. As I have had coffee on an empty stomach and have a little bit of bitterness. Me and my, I know these things. I know where this comes from. I know. I know what I did. So I understand also, I forgive that. I can't remember if that was something, was that Ram Dass communicated through either Alan Watts or Terrence McKenna. I can't remember. All these things come into my consciousness, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, that'll stick with me. But to understand all is to forgive all. And so if there are things that you're still upset about or resentful about or angry about or bitter about, it's an invitation to come to a deeper degree of understanding in there. It's like, well, why did that happen? What did play into that? Can you pull the thread back and back and back and back to its source, and then see like everyone is ultimately innocent, because we all sort of appear on this world, and then the world has its way with us, and it's like, yo, what up? I'm going to hand you all of these ideas and schemas and mores, and there's going to be a lot of, shame is going to be used to mold your behavior into a certain pattern that is very stiff, that doesn't fit you well, and you are going to want to fight against that. But depending on your various the specific things in you, you're going to respond to that pressure differently. But it's mostly familiar fractalized patterns, and very demystifiable. It's like, why do I do that? Why do I feel this way? Why can't I do this? Why does this happen? And then my response is this. Why do I this? Blah, 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 blah. You can come down to these survival mechanisms and be like, okay, well, why am I a fight? Why am I a freeze? Why am I a fawn? Why am I a feign, a play dead, right? I realized play dead is one of mine. Even in my dreams for the longest time. This is actually getting off topic again, but that's okay. That's the nature of these discussions with my past self and with my future self. So the actual mission in these recordings is a love letter through time. And now it's a very Virgoan love letter because it's a lot of scolding, and that's, yeah, it's very much an opt-in situation. But it's what works for me. It's the kind of communication with myself that I find very motivating, because I've realized I don't find desperation motivating at all. I'm just like, no. I find curiosity motivating, and I find, yeah, just like, yeah. Anyway, I'm getting distracted literally by all these fucking notifications that are on my devices. That's a component, minimizing distraction. Holy fuck. I mean, I think you've seen, like, I have red light bulbs and stuff, and at a certain point, I shift everything and downregulate. I exist in silence most of the time. I think if anyone other than me is actually revising these things, you'll notice a couple videos ago, there's a lot of, especially if you're watching in headphones, it can be very disorienting, because you like take off, you're like, what the fuck is going on? No, it's just the neighbors upstairs making ruckus when they leave the house, which is fine. That used to be the most disturbing thing for me imaginable, but now I'm just like, I know what this is, I know what's happening, and I can maintain my sense of direction and orientation and fullness in this moment. I don't have to be like, ugh. But I'm also a person who, like, I will not step foot in a pinball bar because I know what that's going to do to my nervous system. Now I do. That's a specific example because it's a specific experience I had where a friend of mine had his birthday party at a pinball bar, and I went in, like, I don't think I had my headphones with me, or did I? Not headphones, earplugs. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But I got extremely overstimulated, and yeah, I like had to go have a panic attack out in the sidewalk. And then I felt guilty. I was like, I'm supposed to be here for my friend, and it's like, no, like, you're not well. Just leave. Like, just go. No, the bad thing to do would be to force yourself into this scenario where you don't feel well, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel safe, and then, like, be really fake about it, be really stiff, and just generate that stiff, gross, resentful energy into the environment. You can just remove yourself. And that's sort of related to you learn these things by doing them, right? But so there was something that I was a bit flippant about. So first, I opened the video by being all self-conscious about my skin and my hair, and then getting distracted by what I look like, these dregs of vanity in me, right? Because the idea that, oh my God, what if someone else does look at this and they see all the things that I see when I look at myself? And I'm not going to go into what those things are, but, like, we do not see ourselves clearly. And we are not meant to be able to see ourselves in these photographs and devices and clear reflections and mirrors. Like, I actually had a moment a couple days ago where literally all of my mirrors, my reflection was distorted and warped. There was, like, it was almost as though there was a flaw in the mirror, but there wasn't. But it was consistent across different mirrors in my house. It's like, what is this? What is this? And it's the reminder that everything we perceive is through many layers of fiddling in our brain. Our brain, like, does all this extra shit. Like, it does post-processing. And so if you have this idea about yourself or this idea about others, it is going to filter the way you perceive. That's another thing. What I actually wanted to open back up, because I was flippant and dismissive about it in my last talk, is why do some people have this pattern at times, not like sometimes yes, sometimes no, but why is there this pattern of like being slighted or feeling slighted, feeling like someone has done you wrong in some way, and then just keeping that to yourself and not communicating it? There's more to it than I'm aware of, certainly, but I do know a lot about it. I at least know a lot about how I played into those patterns in my relationships. So your mileage may vary. This can be different from person to person and relationship to relationship. In fact, it absolutely will be, because everyone has their own tiny little dials in them that are tuning them to certain patterns and frequencies and levels of comfort with vulnerability. And it could be because of you, it could be because of things that happened before, it's probably both. But Um, and so I have certainly been a person who's like, I don't feel right about the way I'm being treated or this or that. Uh, and then I either just like, so part of it is the just go talk shit behind someone's back rather than bring it to their attention directly. That's one that I see a lot. That's what I see a lot. It happened a lot in my family of origin. It happens a lot in my workplace. It's a pattern, and it's one that like I still get roped into sometimes, and it frustrates me because I'm like, I feel like I've evolved beyond this. I feel like I'm past this, but then it's the thing that's happening, and you just like get dragged back into these old patterns that don't feel good in you and that you don't feel good about in yourself, and you're like, oh, what the fuck? And then part of it like comes out like this. It's like I gotta purge this disgusting thing that I allowed back in because my boundaries became porous, you know? It's hard, man, when there's all these expectations about how to stay connected and how to stay safe, and the things that we take as implicit about, well, this is the mechanism of safety. Okay. So I had a relationship with someone who really, really struggled with conflict and confrontation of any kind. If you looked up people pleaser in the dictionary, their photo is there, right? Like, and it's hard to come out and like actually be fully honest about these things because you don't want to be hurtful. But I was genuinely disgusted. I was genuinely disgusted. And so we have to understand, disgust is the cousin of shame. Disgust is the outward representation of a pattern that exists within you or has existed within you that you find shameful, that you find repulsive about yourself. And so when you feel this disgust about other people, it's just a projection of something in you, and that is true of everything. So you have to see your disgust as an invitation to assess that pattern inside yourself and be like, well, do I still do that? Do I still engage in that? And is there something that I've done in the past that I haven't resolved, that I'm still holding on to this gross feeling about that I think is irredeemable or whatever. So it isn't about the other person being bad. It's about them displaying for you something that you need to be curious about. That's all it is. Be curious about the things that you're feeling. Be curious about the things that you're perceiving. Be curious about the things that you're experiencing, because they have something to tell you, some avenue toward growth that they're offering you. But so this person was like to the point where there, that you've got like the home version of someone and then the public facing version of someone. And I was so repulsed by the public facing version of this person because it was so fucking fake and stiff, like genuinely like held stiff in this fake ass smile. And like, well, I have to do this to make other people feel like I'm something. Genuinely fucking gross. Because I used to do it. That used to be me. And I just like, absolutely not. But I also at this time had a pattern of, and this is the related thing about not being able to really perceive the harm that I was causing through my unconscious, subconscious regurgitation mechanisms, right? So a very specific example is I was very online at the time. I'm on Reddit, I'm on Instagram, I'm on all these places, and I'm like doing the social justice warrior type shit where I'm just, yeah, like it's very ineffective. But it's really in vogue to be on this like white men are trash, like straight white men are the reason everything sucks, and blah 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 blah. I'm just like, yeah, white guys this, white guys that. That was me for a long time, just absorbing this narrative and spewing it back out, right? This is why we have to be really careful about what we consume, because you are what you absorb. So and this is, let me just tell you right now, this is stressful commute leading to like 10 minutes late leaving work because I'm in a conversation that I'm not setting a boundary to get out of because, and then like, oh, traffic's bad, and then, oh, stressful road situation, and then, well, I have to run these errands, and blah, blah, blah. It's going to snow tomorrow, so everyone else is also running their errands, and everyone in the parking lot is like, it just seems like they're being stupid. I understand I'm generating this experience because I'm still all cortisol and adrenaline filled from the incident in traffic that was stressful, that I made it through just fine. But so then like things just kind of, I have a squeaky, annoying, clattery ass cart, and then the water sprayer is all over the place, and then this, and then that, and then that, and then that, and I'm screaming in my car. But I'm like, the water fill station is right by the freezer case, and like it's impossible to find a good, like a harm reduction sort of sweet treat option in the ice cream aisle at Cub Foods. So like I didn't read the label, and I should have read the label because I'm a label reader, but I didn't this time. I was just like, oh, whatever. And so I grab dairy free because I'm like, well, no, I know dairy is not good. I should, like, honestly, like a decent organic dairy option probably would have been harm reduction as opposed to what this is. So this was the dairy free, like oat based Ben & Jerry's, I think chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. One, it doesn't even taste good. They put, it's like sugar water. Second ingredient, sugar water. Not even like cane sugar, whatever. It's sugar water because in order to make it cohere with the oat, I don't know, but it's all a formula. It's bioengineered. It is meant to do something to your brain, right? That is the purpose. It is a bioengineered food meant to play with your chemistry to give you it's like, it's not food. It's not food. It's not nourishing. It is harmful. And like, I am showing that it is harmful. And this is I'm grateful. I am grateful for this. That's the piece. Because my body is so beautifully sensitive and tuned, and my baseline is so good that I can tell. I know what choice it was that led to this. Like, yeah, it's work stress and it's stress, but it's additional stress put on my body by putting weird shit into it that is like, what the fuck is this? And I've genuinely asked my body to communicate with me in ways that I can understand. This is communicating to me in ways I understand. This inflammation, like, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's like, don't eat the fucking Ben & Jerry's. That shit is poison. So, lesson learned. This all heals, right? This all heals with time and love and nourishment and attention. So don't get stressed on it. Anyway, me and my detours. So I had this idea about myself, and I had this narrative about myself, and I had this character that I was playing in life. And I was just very unconscious, Most of my harmful behaviors were pre-psilocybin, right? Because that came in and just shook everything up. It's like, hey, you choose to feel bad. You choose to focus on the negative. You choose a disempowered stance. You choose to see yourself as a victim of life and circumstance. You choose to talk around the ways that you enabled all of these experiences, including down to and including like getting drugged and assaulted on a date, right? That's a hard one to swallow. It's a hard one to swallow. Like, down to and including my first relationship at 14, that was extremely violating and abusive, right? Now, like, you can be like, how can you blame a 14-year-old for this? It's not blame. It's recognizing pattern. It's seeing like, oh, this happened when you were, an infant, and then this happened when you were a small child, and then this happened in school, and this happened in this, and then this happened with your parents, and this happened with your mom, and this happened here. And all of these things molded you in a certain way, where you're holding on to these certain patterns and you're engaging in life in this certain way, and then you're like, I don't know what's happening. Well, of course you don't know what's happening because you're a child, right? Like that's the piece. But at a certain point you stop being a child and you actually gain more agency and you gain more awareness and more capacity to make choices and use your voice and use your body to enforce things. And it's just like it's hard, but I really think that I was not able to heal from a lot of these things. I kept stirring them up. I kept bringing them back up, the intrusive thoughts and the flashbacks and the panic attacks and all these things. Like, that was the wisdom of my mind, body, spirit system telling me, bitch, you're still holding on to this. You haven't resolved this. It's not coming up because you're like, it's PTSD is not what they tell you it is, and it is absolutely curable. It is absolutely curable. It is absolutely curable. Yeah. Do not accept the disempowering narratives handed to you by others. There is an entire structure that benefits from you feeling disempowered and not questioning that, just giving into it and continuing to perpetuate that narrative. But, God, where am I with all this? Okay, so I was not a safe person. I was not a safe person for myself. And this is, I read a meme the other day. It's like someone's psychologist, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, I don't know, someone saying that the closer you get to someone, the more you treat them the way you treat yourself. And the more, like, the closer they get to you, the more they treat you the way they treat themselves. Which is where it's like that you don't really know someone and you don't really know the shape or flavor of the relationship in early dating, because for a lot of reasons, like, to some degree, a certain amount of performance, which you can read. If you are authentic, you can see the inauthenticity in others. And you don't have to gaslight yourself about that. You don't have to question yourself about that. You don't have to be like, oh, well, he said he was super comfortable, but I could literally perceive the anxiety radiating off of his stiff fucking body. Like, you don't have to accept the stories people tell you about themselves, right? And you don't have to accept the stories you're telling you about yourself, right? You can change that narrative. And here's a piece. This whole gaslighting isn't what most people think it is, right? And I think I just want to leave that there for now, but reframing a situation, not to be like, well, I'm not a villain here, because that's what I used to do. I used to very much be like, everything was like trying to dodge the reality. It's like, what do you mean I hurt you? No, I didn't hurt you because I'm hurt. So you hurt me. I didn't hurt you because I'm hurt, right? That's what I was. It was what I knew. It was what was familiar. It was the narratives that I was spinning with my life. But yeah, so like people would bring things to my attention, and yeah, back to like the, oh, white guys are shit thing. Like, I'd be dating white dudes and be like, yeah, white guys are shit. And then they'd be like, it hurts my feelings when you say that. And then I would ridicule them. But then they wouldn't leave, And that's the piece where it's just like, if someone ridicules you for your feelings, they're not a safe person. And if you stay with them, you're not a safe person for yourself. I get it. It's not like I make it sound really simple. But for me now, it is really simple. Like, it genuinely is. It's like, this isn't a hard thing. But it was hard at the time. It's probably hard for anyone engaging in this, which probably no one is engaging in this. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, so like, there would be some kind of wounding, and God, how much it would is again, it comes down to skillfulness. How skillful are you at navigating conflict within yourself? What do you do with the voice inside you that says, this doesn't seem quite right? And how much do you prioritize maintaining a connection over maintaining your connection. And so that's sort of the shape of codependency, etc. Where if you prioritize staying connected with another being over being in coherence with your own truth and your own wellness and all that, you're off track. You just off track, and that's a you thing. You got to figure that out. It's tempting to just like blame things on other people and be like, well, I tried, but they did this and they did that. Like, okay. They did this and they did that. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to respond to this situation? You have to continuously take accountability for your behaviors and your actions and your choices. You cannot just shove that off onto someone else because they didn't respond in the way you wanted them to. That was me. That was my pattern. I was so manipulative. I was so controlling. I was so emotionally, like, just overbearing. And I would look to other people to regulate my nervous system because I didn't know how to do it on my own. I didn't know that's what I was looking for. I didn't have the language for it. I didn't have the framework for it. I didn't understand what I was experiencing. I just had found a way to numb that or to placate it for a certain time. And that, I don't know, it's like at this point I see people talk about co-regulation and I feel gross. Like I feel icky. I'm like, no, you're not a baby. You're not a baby. You're not breastfeeding. You're not crawling up under mom's shirt. And like this, I saw another meme the other day that said dating men is like microdosing motherhood. Fuck, that's too real. It's too real. That's so gross. Oh, it's not like women are much better. Like everyone's where they are. Everyone's at their level of consciousness and awareness of their own patterns. This is your own patterns that are coming up. And so to this idea of where I'd have these relational dynamics where I'm in therapy, I'm gaining skills, I'm gaining self-awareness, I'm gaining awareness of my nervous system, I'm figuring out how to recognize what's happening within myself so that I can disengage and like navigate my own waves and then come back fresh, because that was something that I couldn't allow for a long time. I took any kind of distance, any kind of space as an existential threat. And so I wouldn't allow other people to take space for themselves. I wouldn't allow them to exit an emotionally volatile conversation. I would force them. I would force them to stay with me in it. And I would do every fucking nasty thing. Everyone. You know, the threats of self-harm, the threats of suicide, the this, the that, all these like borderline traits, these borderline behaviors, like, yeah, I'd take them out of the toolbox, right? Because I was in such a state of catastrophic dysregulation that it actually felt like a life or death situation. That was a nervous system issue. So, it's like these confessions are useful. Because these are such shameful behaviors, right? These are such disgusting things to admit to. But like, I've resolved it. I don't do this shit anymore. You know, the last time I self-injured, it was because someone wasn't respecting my boundaries and threatening to call an ambulance because I was like breathing heavily and they didn't want to deal with my like I was having a panic attack, I guess. It was like the first one in years. I was like, what the fuck? Because I asked for space and he didn't give it to me. I asked him to stop and he didn't stop. And this is what happens. And what I should have done is left the room. I should have left the engagement. I should have left the conversation. I should have been like, all right, you are not allowing me the space that I'm asking for, so I'm going to take the space that I need. But you learn these things. Like I say, triggers are surprise. You surprise into this state. So I'm like, and I'm thinking about all this history of women in my family being institutionalized, like institutionalization as a weapon. And I'm like, wow, this is the person who like, quote unquote, loves me. So uncomfortable with the fact that I'm having a physiological response that I'm dealing with, right? I'm dealing with it. I'm navigating it. But he's uncomfortable and he's afraid. And he's like, I'm gonna call an ambulance. And that's the piece where his emotions in that moment are so fucking disgusting to me. Like they still disgust me. That whole exchange still disgusts me. And it wouldn't have happened if I had just left the room. It wouldn't have happened if I hadn't still been in this relationship that was dead and over. Right? So I'm disgusted that I was still trying to play into something that was very clearly not there anymore, you know? But here's the other piece. The other side of that is that I needed that experience because it displayed my own traits, my own behaviors, my own shadows in a way where I was able to be in the other person's shoes and be like, oh, is that what that feels like? Is that what that looks like? It's a gift. It's a blessing to have experienced that kind of disgust and be like, oh shit, that's really unpleasant. It is really unpleasant to be around someone who is just violently weaponizing their emotions and demanding you do and behave certain ways and telling you your reality, right? Like he was really wildly misinterpreting things that I was saying because he was inebriated and I was not. And then just being like, I don't know, really emotionally reactive and volatile about it. And I'm like, dude, stop. Like, stop putting all these words in my mouth. That's literally not what I said. It's not what I meant. And it feels really bad to be told, you know, and that's the thing too, right? When we get dysregulated, we start concocting these narratives and twisting things. We twist all of the input to match, to be coherent with what we're feeling, because everything needs to be in alignment, and the cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable and confusing. So if you're looking at someone who's very calm and regulated and it's like, God, it's like there's so much to it, and I've been talking for 33 fucking minutes already. But yeah, it's like going back to this idea of this partnership I was in where my ex literally had like, he had a note in his phone where he would just keep track of like all the little things I did to bother him. And he wouldn't tell them to me. He would bring them to his therapist because at one point we were having a conflict and his conflict skills were so much lower than mine that it was very frustrating and gross to like try to engage with. So I was like, I need you to go to therapy for this relationship to continue. And I need you to bring these things to your therapist. And he took that, like he did malicious compliance, and I'm not sure if he would acknowledge to this day that it was malicious compliance, but it was. It absolutely was. And I can recognize it because it's stuff that I used to do too, even with like I did it recently, like not recently, but sometime last year. I was on the phone with someone and someone playfully told me to shut up, and I just like didn't say a word. I just sat there quietly on the phone because I felt hurt, and it brought up a bunch of other shit that was unrelated, past issues of being told to shut up and blah, 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 and being silenced and being disregarded and all these things. But malicious compliance, it's bitter, it's vindictive, and it is not the way I want to be. Sometimes it crawled up in him. So he just like wouldn't talk to me about things. He would just bring them to his therapist and talk about it, and you know, then he would weaponize that. And is that fair that to call it weaponizing? I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what he was thinking, but that's how it felt to me, where he'd be like, well, my therapist said this and my therapist said that and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, and you're a fucking reliable narrator, my ass. Like, you're there. But I'm sure that's something that I did too, right? Like we see these things so that we don't repeat them. I'm sure in past relationships I weaponized things with my therapist. I probably did. Not that I would remember it, but anyway, so he had this note in his phone of all of these little ways that I would slight him and whatever, ways that he was dissatisfied with me and my behavior, but he wouldn't bring them to my attention. He just had this little note, and I knew he had this little note, and he'd reference the note, but he wouldn't reference its contents. He was just like holding his book of receipts, right? Just like, get the fuck out of that relationship, Ave. Get the fuck out of that relationship. Get the fuck out of that relationship. Okay? And then he started accusing me of gaslighting because he had just learned that term. And he, at that point, decided to take any kind of disagreement as gaslighting. Any time where we remembered things differently, gaslighting. And I'm like, you're using this term, you don't know what it means. And it's like, it's gross, it's embarrassing. Like, you don't know to be embarrassed. But like, this is not. But again, this is like something from my past, some pattern of who I used to be and how I used to behave, just like coming up right in front of me, like, all right, darling, I'm going to show you what you've been. Is this what you want to be in the future? The answer is no, absolutely not. But yeah, so I was practicing what I was preaching, saying like, I like, can we have relationship check-ins where we discuss what's going right, what could be better, blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, that's too much for me. No, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. I can't be expected to talk about our relationship. I'm just really busy. I've got a lot going on. Meanwhile, he's maintaining this like list of resentments. So, oh my God. But I'm also like having an emotional affair with my idea of someone from my past. And this is how it happens, right? Like, you can be anxious, you can be avoidant, you can have both patterns in you, and like it can be triggered, and you can be like, all right, well, I guess I'm on this side of the equation now. And it's tough too when you start a relationship insecure and disorganized, and then you're growing as you're in the relationship, and then you outgrow the relationship, right? But you don't want to admit that. Like, I don't want to relate in these ways. This is no longer intriguing to me. This is no longer interesting to me. This no longer scratches my itches, right? Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in this level of dysregulation and drama and pretend. Like, and I don't want to feel like I'm hiding in my own house, and I don't want to sit here and like be trying to find any modicum of peace and self-connection while my self-regulation is threatening you to such a degree that you're over there huffing and puffing and stomping and slamming shit, but you would never acknowledge that you are feeling abandoned by me because I'm not engaging in those patterns with you. Because you abandon yourself. And that's what it is. As an adult, you can't be abandoned. You cannot be abandoned by someone else. That is not how that happens. You are responsible for your life and your wellness and your progression and your health and your nourishment and your activity levels and all of that. That isn't someone else's responsibility. That is your responsibility. And if you are feeling isolated and abandoned, that's because you have isolated and abandoned yourself. And that's what it is. It's what it is. And you probably did it because it happened to you earlier in life when you were like there was probably some kind of genuine need that was not adequately met by your early caregivers, so you learned to just segment off that part of yourself and continue the abuse, neglect, and abandonment. But that is something that you are doing to yourself. And you seek a corrective emotional experience in your partnerships, and then you get mad when it doesn't work out the way that you envisioned it and the way that you plotted it, the way that you scripted it. You can't script other people, you can't script relationships. I mean, you can try, but you will be fucking disappointed, and then you will be violent, and you will cause harm. It's like, if that's what you gotta do, that's what you gotta do. It's like genuinely, here's the thing, it's okay. It's okay to engage in these things. Like, it's just a human life. It doesn't really matter all that much. And like, what matters is what you do with it. What matters is how you learn through it and how you progress and how you grow, how you dedicate your attention and orient your resolve. But so I'm in this relationship, and I'm noticing in the moment when I'm feeling something's not quite right, when I'm feeling like just disconnected. Like, I had a pattern of engaging with workaholics you know, people who really used their work as a way of escaping any kind of real depth and intimacy within themselves. They don't need to know who they are and how they feel. They can be completely disconnected from their bodies because they have a project that they're working on. And they can sit here and bitch and complain about it. Like, oh, I'm so overcommitted and I'm so stressed and there's just so much going on and maybe things will slow down in 2 months. And they never slow down because it's an issue within them of the boundaries that they're setting, and they're inviting it because they would rather be burnt out and overcommitted at work than sit in stillness within themselves and feel how out of coherence they are with their truest orientation in life. So like that's and why am I drawn to these people? Why am I drawn to these patterns? But so yeah, I would notice I'm feeling something, or like it just nerves, like I don't like I have asked you several times not to cook foods for me that make me feel bad. And it's like you keep doing it. You keep delivering me bacon. Bacon doesn't settle well with me. It doesn't, like, my body does not want bacon. And it's difficult for me when I've asked you specifically, like, please don't present me with food that, like, I don't know, it's a boundary thing, right? So we'd have these conversations and he would promptly forget about them, and it, like, he would be trying to perform his way into connection with me when, like, doing stuff for me and buying me things and giving me things is not the way to be connected with me. The way to be connected with me is to have genuine intimacy, which means actually talking about things, which means actually having awareness of how you're feeling and what's happening in you and bringing it to my attention. But he's holding on to this version of me from early relationship where he would bring something to my attention and I'd explode, and I would, like, be like, what the fuck, how can you say that, blah, 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 no, that's wrong. I'd argue with him about his feelings. I'm not pretending it was cute. I'm not pretending it was good. But I took those experiences into my therapy sessions and I learned about them, and I developed strategies for recognizing it and pumping the brakes and learning how to fucking pause and sit with my feelings before just, like, trying to wiggle my way out of any kind of accountability for causing harm, right? Like, I haven't always been this version of myself, and how the fuck do you think I got here? And how do you think I'm gonna get where I'm going next? By continuing to talk through things and then listen back to it. Say, that's interesting. It's interesting where you're going with this. It's interesting the way you're talking about this. Can we open this up a little bit? I can do this with myself now, right? Like, day to day, I grow so fucking much because I'm curious about my blind spots, because I'm curious about my the shortcuts I take in my thinking, right? We all take a lot of shortcuts. We take a lot of shortcuts and we make assumptions, and often they lead to incorrect places. So just being aware of that and being responsive to the reality, and allowing for the fact that sometimes things that seem really true to you will not be reflected in others' perception. And that's fine, because we are all piloting around our own little universe. We are all operating our own structures and worlds. And if you disagree on what happened in an interaction, it isn't that one person is lying or misleading or gaslighting. It isn't this, like, intentional act to undermine your experience. Like, sometimes it is, but it doesn't have to be that. It can just be that we filter information based on so many things. So you have different biases, and it can be as simple as that. But yeah, so if I'd go to my ex and I'd be like, hey, can we talk about something? I've been feeling a little, I feel like we're pretty disconnected. The way that we spend time together isn't really doing anything for me. I'm noticing myself contracting around you. I'm noticing myself feeling like I have to hide pieces of myself from you. And I'm just curious about that. I'm curious about whatever. But like that can be interpreted through these wheels as like I'm saying, you're making me hide. That's not what I fucking said. That's not what I fucking said. But sometimes my mouth would run away with me, and I would phrase something in a really shitty accusatory way. And then I'd hear it back and be like, sorry, can I rephrase that? If you don't let someone rephrase that, then you are not on board for them learning and growing and progressing. If you don't allow someone to make the mistake, the old pattern, recognize it, and be like, that's actually not how I want to say this. That's actually not how I want to present this. Like, no, that's what you said, so that's what you really did. Fuck you. Okay? Okay. And I don't mean that. Like, I know I don't mean that. I know I don't mean that. I know I don't mean fuck you. I know I don't mean that. Right? So I take that back. That's not how I want to communicate that. Right there, perfectly, in the moment. That's not how I want to say that. But how do I want to say that? There's something in here that's still a little sensitive. There's something in here that's still a little bit of a cat swatting at you. My projection onto this moment. Feeling frustrated about places I wasn't allowed the space to learn. And that's a deep wound. That one's like, that's early shit, right? But if someone isn't giving you space to learn, just be like, okay, I see that this is not a context that I can operate fully in. And I refuse to be in a place that clips my wings, you know? I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be here. And that's not a threat. That's not an ultimatum. That's just good sense. That's just good self-care. It's like, I will give you an opportunity to allow me space to grow. But if that threatens you, see ya. I'm gone. Yeah. So bring something up, and then he would feel, I can't say necessarily exactly what he felt, but I can hypothesize, right? So I would bring up a problem in the relationship, and he would feel immensely threatened, like, and this is how I would feel in previous situations too, right? You know, we're just like do-si-doing. We're shifting who's playing what role in any given conflict or moment. And so, be like, hey, like, I feel like you're spending, you keep saying, like, you keep, so for him, it was a lot of empty promises. It was a lot of, and this is just like a pattern that I have in life, where I engage with people who say things that are not reflected in reality or in their behaviors. It's easier to talk than to do, easier to say than to be. And so it'd be like, yeah, well, we're going to do this thing, we're going to do that thing, and blah, blah, blah. And well, once it quiets down at work and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, it's literally never going to quiet down at work until you move differently, until you set boundaries, until you start saying no. Until you start saying, I'm not picking that up. Because he's the person who'd always come in and overperform to his own detriment. Like, his gut health was all fucked up, and yeah, just a lot of behaviors of overcommitment, and then like acting like a helpless victim. It's like, these are choices that you're making. These are choices that you're making, and you are choosing to always prioritize this over, you know, it's like you're choosing this over our connection, and that's fine. But I just want you to be aware of what that is leading to. And it was so funny too, right? Because he fumbled my birthday pretty badly, and it was just sort of a nail in the coffin where I was like, oh, I see. Like, this is over. And I stayed in it for a few more months. I don't know why. Just like allowing for the fact that maybe things would get better, but I was like, this is not gonna get better. So I just like took all of my energy out of the relationship. I stopped caring about what he was doing or thinking, if he was gonna be engaged. And I really just put all of my energy into myself, into what I wanted. I allowed myself to see what I want. I'm like, what matters to me? What matters to me? What do I want? How do I take care of myself? How do I engage in my own curiosity and wonder and joy in life? And I just did that ruthlessly, and I just stopped considering him at all. Like, not at all, but to some degree. And then he was super into me, right? Because that's how it works. That's how that dynamic works. Once your energy diverts, then they want it back. Then they feel the lack of it. And he was one. He would just come up to me and be like, well, I was talking to my therapist. You know, it's just really clear that I bring more to the table than you do. Get the fuck out of this relationship, Ave. Get the fuck out of this relationship. I did. Obviously I did. But yeah, just this narrative is like, oh, you don't even see me. You don't see the influence that I have in your life. You don't see how powerfully my energy corrects your ship. You don't notice it. You don't perceive it because it doesn't look the way that you think it should, because I don't demonstrate care the way that you do. I don't buy you things, and I don't give you things, and I don't perform all these tasks that I don't want to do just to try to get your favor and approval and to feel worthy. I don't do those things. So you think that I'm not providing anything. You think that I'm not bringing anything. You think that I'm not generating anything. Watch your fucking life fall apart. But like, that's what it is when resentment builds. That's what it is when resentment builds. And resentment is not about another person. Resentment is about your own self-abandonment. Resentment is about the way that you ignore your own thoughts and feelings and needs to try to satisfy someone else, because when you see them satisfied, that gives you permission to feel worthy. That gives you permission to feel good about yourself. You made someone else happy, so that means you have worth. That's not how it works. And if that's what you're looking to, you are going to be disappointed over and over and over and over again. Anyway, I've tried to say this 17,000 times and I keep just going off on all my fucking tangents. So I'd bring something to his attention and he would feel threatened and he would feel angry and he would feel triggered. And then it would be that, like, the shift in stance, which I had been the master of previously. So it was really annoying to watch it happen to me. It's like, oh shit, turnabout's fair play, I guess. Fuck this. It was a strategy that I had, though. It was a strategy that had been successful, so you just keep using it, right? It's not a conscious thing. You're not going out of your way to be like, yeah, now I'm going to do this thing. Now I'm going to avoid accountability for my harmful behaviors by shifting the narrative and making you into the asshole. And here's the thing. I'm like, oh, that's just right out of the narcissist playbook. Like, don't act like you haven't done it too, because you fucking have. You fucking have, because it's a strategy we all pick up. We see it. It's done to you successfully, and you see how bad it feels and how quickly it manipulates your behavior and shifts you onto the back foot. This was that relationship when I was 14. This was the relationship with my mother. This is like, I saw this strategy used to good effect against me, and then somehow it just got absorbed into me as a strategy that I could use on others. We pick things up. You are what you absorb. So he started doing this to me, right? And it wasn't a conscious thing. He wasn't like going out of his way to be a shitbag. That's not how this works. But the conversation would be opened on my terms to be like, hey, can we talk about something that's been bothering me? And they'd be like, no, we're not going to talk about the thing that's been bothering you. I'm going to talk to you about the 15 things that are in my fucking resentment note that I've talked to my therapist about in a way that casts me as the innocent victim and you as the callous villain. Which is like, fine. That's fine. You can tell stories that way if you want to. Frame the narrative however you feel like. That's okay. That's how I feel about it now. That's okay. Have your version of reality. That's cool. But if I find it really dissonant with mine, I don't want to be syncing our realities anymore. Just go my own way. It's fine. And it really is fine. But yeah, so it's like this, when you hold on to resentments, like, one, it just poisons you. It poisons you, it poisons your relationship. It like, but that habit comes up from a pattern of feeling unsafe when expressing grievances. And part of that is because, like, the way you present these things does matter. It's easy to be tactless. It's easy to be hurtful. It's easy to be accusatory and whatever. And that was the problem with most of these things, is the way. And I know it's so I know it's so I know. So I know to be careful in my phrasing, to not say, you make me do that. That's one that just drives me nuts. Well, you make me feel this. I don't make you feel shit. I don't make you feel shit. But that's the problem, right? Because when you're in conflict with me and you don't choose your words super carefully, I listen to the words you say and I'm like, I don't agree with the way that you're presenting this. And that's one of the areas where relating with me can be very frustrating and it can be very demoralizing. I get it. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate this space of hearing what people mean, not just the exact words they say, and not getting super pedantic and jumping down their throats for phrasing things in a way that I find distasteful and imprecise. Because here's the thing, I can be an intellectual bully. I can absolutely, it took me a long time to realize this. It was actually, I got a neuropsych eval to figure out if I'm on the autism spectrum. And it came back inconclusive, because it could be autism, it could be complex trauma. Either way, it doesn't fucking matter. The diagnosis isn't important. The pattern of behaviors is important, and the information about the way that you relate to stimulus is important. So it's like, it doesn't matter what it is, it matters what you do with it. But I got an IQ test done as part of that and found out that I have a high IQ, and like, that's probably the source of a lot of my interpersonal struggles, because high IQ is about a couple things, like crisp, good memory retention, just like having a good solid memory, but having really fast connections, like thinking really quickly and being able to. So part of that thinking really quickly is like, I can come to conclusions really quickly, but they may not be the right conclusions. They may just be like the first one that my brain comes to. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I figured this out. And it's like, no, you didn't. You figured out one thing that it could be, but not the thing that it is. So caution, caution, caution. Sometimes your brain is accustomed to doing things based on implicit bias, based on things you've experienced before, but you haven't experienced this particular moment before. So stop assuming you know everything about it and be curious about it. Ave. But that's the thing where grace is so important. If you don't have trust in your relationship, you have to trust yourself. That's primary. It's prime piece. But there has to be trust in your relationship to know that, like, no, we have the same mission here. We want to understand each other. We want to understand the situation. And we're going to, like, have feelings about it. We're going to feel frustrated. Like, oh, that doesn't seem right? Like, no, I acknowledge I did that thing, but you're projecting motivations onto this that weren't there. And that was something I did all the time, right? God, with relations with people who enjoy their spaciousness and do stuff on their own. Like, there's a long time where I didn't really do anything. I was just like sitting there waiting for someone to pay attention to me. It's like, oh, so gross. But it's where I was. It was where I was. I wasn't giving adequate attention to myself. Thinking I needed it from others. And that's the thing, right? It's like, call it narcissism, call it whatever you want. Like, it is a pattern of energy. It's just energy dynamics, and it is just orientation. It is just skillfulness. It is just awareness, right? So don't fucking write people off. You don't have to engage with them, but understand that sometimes it really is just a lack of consciousness about what's playing out. But yeah, like, it can be very frustrating to have these patterns come up, right? Where, so you need to engage with people who are at similar levels of skill as you, especially for your most intimate connections, because it feels bad. It feels unrelenting to feel like you're the adult in a relationship. And like, this is the problem with a very emotionally immature society. We inhabit a very emotionally immature society. You know, half the population is conditioned to like really just suppress their range of, I mean, everyone is conditioned to suppress their range of feeling. Everyone is shamed for having strong emotional experiences. And so you just get accustomed to suppress, hide, shove. And then the only option is for explosions later. Like, I'm going to use a gross analogy, but it's just actually an apt analogy. So, if you think about, so if you're constipated, right? You've got this like blockage, you've got all this like old shit, like things that are supposed to be moving out of your body, just like sitting stuck in your system. And, yeah, it's at some point, something explosive is going to happen. Because it has to. These things need to leave your system. And if you aren't being attentive enough to the overall maintenance of your system, being responsive to the reality and attuned to what's going on, do you know your rhythms? Do you know? Fuck, there's so much to it, and I've been talking for an hour. Oh my god, I need to have some breakfast. But yeah, I guess I'll just wrap it up here. Another fucking storytelling hour with self-aware Ave, who has become very mindful of these structures. Like, what was I opened a parenthetical that I did not close in how I would relate with people who would take space. You know, it's like why aren't you texting me back? That pattern. Why aren't you texting me back? Why aren't you? Maybe because I'm not fucking attached to my phone. Well, why you looked at my Instagram story, but you still haven't texted me back? Get off your fucking device. Stop monitoring. Stop checking. Stop obsessing. Stop wondering. Are they gonna get back to you? Probably. If they don't, oh well. Jesus fuck. This letter to my past self. But as I'm just flipping through pages of my human design workbook. But I would project malice onto neutral behaviors. I would be like, you're going out of your way to not talk to me. No, that's really not what's happening. No one's trying to fucking punish you. I mean, maybe sometimes, but only after you like really are kind of asking for it. Like, sorry, but that's sort of the truth. Like the silent treatment, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you are awful to talk to because you're just snide and bitchy and accusatory and you always like jabbing little digs into people and questioning their reality and scrutinizing their choices and their appearance and their words, and if you're expressing disgust at their opinions, and it's just, I mean, this is what I was. And I know why, and I'm grateful to have survived to become this version of me, who still has blind spots, who's still growing, who still has a bitter taste in their mouth at times, who still says the ugly thing, who still causes harm, who still has to scale off from manipulative patterning. I don't want to control things. I really don't. I don't want to control things. I don't want to exert the force of my will over things to leverage how they progress. I want to be surprised by the universe. I want to be embraced and delighted. And so I am. But these are choices that I make. This is the orientation of gratitude and faith. something that I couldn't have had then, something that I didn't have access to before, because I didn't have a soul yet, you know? I had to ask for a soul. I had to allow myself to believe in a soul. And this is the piece. Belief is a prerequisite for experiencing magic. You have to allow yourself to believe that it's possible. You have to allow yourself to believe that there is more than you can perceive with the five senses they tell you are your only way of navigating this plane of existence. There are deeper ways of knowing things. And looking outside of yourself for approval on what you already know to be true, that's an addiction to the outside world. And if you sit in fear, and you sit in anxiety, and you sit in worry, because someone else might something, then you're not awake. You're not in this moment. I was thinking a little bit today, and thinking specifically of 10 years ago today was the last time I saw a very special person alive. I behaved deplorably, and yeah, it needed to happen. But what I wrote about it that came into clarity today is I wanted to be the center of his story because I'd made him the center of mine. I wanted to be the center of his story because I'd made him the center of mine. I understand that now. I have context for it now, and I have the remedy for it now. We can't center other people in our narrative. We can choose to include them. We can choose to engage with them. We can choose to allow them to shave my mustache once this is healed up. Choose to allow ourselves to be influenced by them, right? There are a lot of things that we can choose, but we can't choose to center someone else in our story, because then we've lost the plot, right? So why was he the center of my story? Because I was selfless. I didn't know who I was. I had spent so much of my time and energy just trying to receive nourishment and attention. And there was an incomplete transition from childhood to adulthood because I got rocked into a perpetual state of terror. And the only soothing for that terror was this other person. So fucking unfair. So fucking unfair. Another thing that I wrote down was, reluctance in others is not an invitation to prove yourself worthy. Reluctance in others is not an invitation to prove yourself worthy. We can move past our worst moments. We don't have to exist within them forever, and we don't have to continue to be surprised by them when they come up unexpectedly. We don't have to keep triggering landmines. We can acknowledge the pattern, and see that in adulthood, right? I can't speak to things that happened before. There are things that happen. There are things that happen. And I fully acknowledge that. And this isn't a place of like, because that's where people like to go, especially if it's part of their story. Especially if it's part of their story. These formative experiences, you know. Well, how can you say that it's a child's fault that someone abused them? It's not what's being said. What's being said is that's something that happened, and you can fight against it, and you can look at the injustice of it, and you can feel the disgust of it, and you can be like, it's so unfair, and why, and that fucked me up for life, blah, blah, blah. That's the narrative that you're choosing. It is your responsibility to find peace, to find acceptance. Acceptance is the road to every choice. You can't choose. You can't choose if you're attached to injustice. And so you just have to know that you're worthy of a real life. You know? You are worthy of choosing yourself and nourishing yourself and caring for yourself. And it's really unfair and inappropriate and abusive. It's abusive to look to others to perform that task for you. Because you are not an infant. You aren't. You may emotionally be an infant still, but you're not. You're an adult. And you have the cognitive capacity and the access to tools and information to change the way you relate to your own suffering and not make it anyone else's fucking responsibility to navigate for you. Because when you want someone else to take care of you, you are abusing their attention to placate yourself. You are using them like a drug. They're your heroin. Or your Midol. Or your cocaine. Or your video game. They're your diversion from the inner path, which is the one you need to walk. It feels bad. It feels bad to be cast in that role. It feels bad to find yourself an accessory to someone else's refusal to grow. So hopefully there's something in all of this yammering that sparks something necessary within you. Okay, until next time.